Is that a cow on your cap? Why is it everything he wears looks good on him?
Yeah, please try wear that.
Fucking
I want to see what it looks like on you.
It's annoying. You don't look stupid. You don't look stupid wearing anything, bro. Two things. One, your head's massive. But actually, I realise it's not your head.
It's the hair, isn't it?
Your hair.
Yeah.
Okay, what was the options in this poll?
I don't know.
I can't. Are you sure we're positioned right? I feel like we're a bit this way. Say something for us, Clayton.
Wagwan Generals. No, I don't
You're
speak
not
that loud.
speak
Yeah.
like that, mate.
Hello, testing. Arsenal are going to win the league and the Champions League and the FA Cup.
Testing. Delusional fucking Arsenal fan as usual. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the People's Poll podcast, where I give the Twitter community or the X community the option of 3 topics for us to discuss on a podcast. And it's FPL Gameweek 1 on Friday. I went for 3 FPL-related topics this week. And Suj is busy, so today I'm joined by Clayton Fernandez. How are you, Clayton?
All good, all good. Happy Arsenal fan this morning. Get that in early.
Okay, it's Tuesday, Clayton, but thanks for telling everyone that we're pre-recording about 24 hours in advance because we're all... No, it's good because shit's going to date within 24 hours, no doubt at all. So there were 3 options in the poll that went out. One was FPL price points for us to potentially pick our favourite player at each price point in FPL. Another option was the idea of looking at what we would do if the season was starting in game week 8, which is a roundabout period many people might be thinking of using their first wild card, and the fixtures look very different. I wondered how much more Liverpool, for example, or Aston Villa we may have in our teams if wild carding in game week 8, but you fairly unanimously, by a long way, voted for us to go through predicted game week 1 lineups. So the caveat is, yes, we're pre-recording this on Monday, and 2, I definitely don't have any ITK into all the 20 clubs, and these are my own individual predictions from what I know and learnt speaking to correspondents and what's changed over the weekend. Suj is calling me, which is not inconvenient at any point at all. As the guys will know, I've been asking Suj to call me for about 3 hours, and now he's calling me while we're recording the podcast. Thanks, Suj. We'll reject you for the moment. Right, game week 1 predicted lineups. So what I normally do for our advanced tier patrons is a team news stream on a Friday where I run through this. And I'm going to do this quite similar to how I do that. Clayton's going to jump in and ask things that he wants to oppose with, and we're going to go through these in order of the games being played. So we'll start with Burnley and Manchester City in game week on Friday night, So Burnley, predicted lineup, I think we can probably expect a back 4 that will probably move in towards a back 3 in possession. They're quite possession-based, Burnley, but how possession-based it'll be against Manchester City is a little bit unknown. So predicted lineup that I've got is, I think Muric will get the nod in goal. Back 4 of Alderkill, O'Shea, Bayer, and probably Connor Roberts covering at left-back at the moment, but we do know Burnley have big interest in the left-back. Midfield, Burnley ITKs I've seen online seem to think Josh Cullen will be unavailable, who's a very important player to them. Can't find any information on Jack Cork, who's been linked with a possible swap move for Sheffield United's Sander Berger at the time of recording. So I've got Brownhill and Cork in midfield, and ahead of that, Goodmanson, Amdouni, Zarawi, and I think Lyle Foster, as it stands, based on pre-season minutes, might get the nod up front. Is there anything on that you want to question or have got a problem with, Clayton?
No problems. Just why'd you go with that keeper?
I think Trafford, according to Jack, had a difficult moment in one of the games, and don't particularly think Muric has done anything wrong. It feels a little bit like the Ramsdale-Raya situation, where it's Muric's shirt to lose, I think, a little bit. Trafford's obviously a long-term buy. If Trafford goes in goal game week 1, then there's clear clarity that he's the number 1 goalkeeper. So I think Muric will be given the chance to keep hold of the shirt. But as Jack said on Correspondent Week, it probably is a bit of a coin flip.
Yeah, and if Berg comes in, straight in?
He might have to, particularly if I've got Jack Cork in that lineup, but particularly if he's unavailable. Josh Cullen, Burnley ITKs I was searching for on Sunday evening seemed to be suggesting he'd be doubtful for the Villa game, which is game week 3, because remember they've got no game week 2 fixture. So he's got next to no chance of playing game week 1. He's very important for them. He basically runs the show in midfield from a deep lying position. Manchester City, right, this is the usual caveats and coin flips, and the first thing to say is follow Luke, FPL Dis, who's updated his handle. Hope you're well, Luke. But this is my best stab at it for City, who have obviously completely signed for Josko Vardy. I was in at 5.0, but I 1% chance, in my opinion, of starting Gameweek 1. He'll be integrated first. Ederson in goal. Walker, Stones, Diaz, and Akanji. Rodri in front of that. And then the 4 behind Haaland of Silva, Foden, Kovacic, Grealish. With obviously the big Norwegian up front. Fire away with your thoughts to that, Clayton.
This isn't going to happen often this season, but yeah, I agree with that. I think that's kind of what I have for my predicted 11 for them as well. Typical, it's going to be like 4 or 5 wrong. But yeah, that's kind of what I have at the minute for them as well.
Yeah, I think the real debatable ones here is, I guess it's probably 2 from 3 of Walker, Akanji and Ake. Walker playing in the Community Shield doesn't give us too much in terms of this sort of fixture. Playing against an opponent like Martinelli, he's going to want to favour Kyle Walker where he can, I think. Akanji possibly gets the nod on the left-hand side. John Stones would therefore come out from centre-back, which he didn't do in the Arsenal game, but he didn't do that when the two teams met in the Premier League in April either. City played a 4-4-2 then, and they basically did on Sunday as well. Rodri's fairly standard in front of that. The question marks probably is Grealish, I think, plays. Haaland will play. And then Silva, Foden, Kovacic, obviously in competition with De Bruyne and Alvarez. I don't think there's a necessity to force De Bruyne in quickly.
No, agree.
And obviously Alvarez played against yourselves, Clayton, but again, it was very much a 2 up front.
Yeah.
So I think Foden will go in there, but if people are looking for that from the FPL perspective, like my confidence in Foden starting wouldn't be more than about 60-65% right now. It's no stronger than that, and it's not stronger than it was this time last week. As I said on Monday's pod, it's De Bruyne that's worried me most. So even Foden could well play this one, and then what happens from Game Week 2 against Newcastle is an entirely different matter. But yeah, that's what I think for City. The Arsenal team against Nottingham Forest, Clayton, so I'm sure you'll want to pick bones out of this. Ramsdale in goal. White, Saliba, Gabriel, Timber left back as he was in the Community Shield. Thomas Partey, Saka, Odegaard, Declan Rice, Martinelli, Havertz up front. What do you disagree with?
Nothing. Same predicted lineup as me.
So we did think, and I think you was in agreement with Adam Pritchard, weren't you, prior to the Community Shield, that Nick Nketiah would probably play.
So I slightly differed on that. I thought it would be Trossard. I think Adam said Nketiah. But both of us were in agreement. We both thought Havertz was
both wrong.
Yeah, we were both wrong. Great start. But yeah, both of us kind of thought Havertz would be third down the pecking order. And yeah, I thought Havertz did pretty well. Personally, he should have scored, but his all-round game looked good. And yeah, I think Arteta's going to go with the same team.
I think in here, Havertz definitely plays somewhere, whether it's at the 9 or in the more withdrawn 8 role. I just think it's in a position where there's enough people who've got some doubts about him, and the fixtures are good enough, like get some confidence in him in one form or another. I would not be at all surprised if it's Rice deeper, Havertz deeper, and Nketiah plays or Trossard plays, as you suggested. But that's the same team as the Community Shield, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what
might well be.
Yeah, that's what I'd stick my colours to right now as well.
All right, cool. I was expecting some abuse from that. Nottingham Forest, so it'll almost definitely be a back 3, which I'm sure will probably look more like a back 5 in that game at the Emirates on Saturday lunchtime. As it stands, I think George Shelvey will probably play in goal. Ethan Hovarth had a nightmare in a friendly against Stade Rennes that they lost 5-0 last Wednesday. Shelvey played in goal at the weekend in a 0-0 draw against Frankfurt and acquitted himself quite well. We know there's big links with Matt Turner. One of the things I'd said to you and to Suj is, I don't know what interest there is for Arsenal to rush this through when presumably Turner would go and goal and play against Arsenal at the weekend. So I think either way, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a gentleman's agreement, maybe even, that Turner wouldn't play the game.
Yeah, because literally about 20 minutes before recording this, it's looking like, fees agreed and everything like that. So, yeah, whether there's a gentleman's agreement, that makes sense, but
it looks very likely. I think back 3 for Forest as it stands, and have got injuries in the position, probably Bolly, Worrell and McKenna, which is weaker than they'd want it to be. Felipe is obviously a big miss from that. Wing backs, I think, will be Serge Aurier, and Ola Aina will play on the left-hand side. Mangala, Yates and Danilo as a probable 3. And then I think you've probably got Johnson and Gibbs-White both playing in the forward positions. Taiwo Awoniyi didn't play at the weekend. And there is some concern amongst the Nottingham Forest community at the time of recording that there may be an injury that Forest are trying to cover up at the moment to maintain lack of interest in perhaps Brennan Johnson, and obviously spending themselves if they wanted them replace. Yeah. If Johnson's still being linked daily with Brentford and Tottenham, are the two he's getting very much linked with. I think as it stands with Awoniyi out, Johnson probably plays with Gibbs-White. We didn't think, when I spoke to Mark last week, we didn't think Johnson would play, but was working very much on the assumption that Awoniyi would be fit. We don't know what the Awoniyi situation is at the moment. They're light, but it's worth saying they're trying to invest in players at the moment. Anything on Forest?
No, all good.
Bournemouth against West Ham. It's a 3 o'clock kickoff Saturday. 4-2-3-1 we can expect from Bournemouth with a real left-sided bias. So this would be one of the more confident ones, certainly defensively. I'm almost certain Neto in goal, back 4, Smith, Zabani, Senesi and Milos Kerkez, a very exciting left-back to keep an eye on, will bomb forward. I think the midfield 2 at the moment as it stands, probably Lewis Cook and Philip Billing. Dango Atara, right-hand side. Ryan Christie as the 10, who will move into wide positions. I've got Jayden Anthony to get the nod over Justin Kluivert, which I did mention to Neil Grover on Correspondent Week. He thought there was a stronger chance of Kluivert playing. And obviously Dominic Solanke we would expect to play
as
the 9. Anthony?
Yeah.
I just think the word that I'd got was he'd had a very good pre-season, and Kluivert had been used in more variations of positions. Like, I wouldn't be that surprised if Kluivert played the 10 position. Right. Like, I don't think it's unfeasible that Kluivert and Anthony could both play even. But I just wonder if Anthony might get the nod to start. It's a coin flip. With Bournemouth's fixtures, I don't think there's too much interest in their players from an FPL perspective as it stands. But I wouldn't be 100% sure on Kluivert starting personally. West Ham, Fabianski in goal. Sorry, guys. Suj is still in agreement with me that we're pretty confident Fabianski will play in goal.
I think the same as well.
I think back 4, probably Tilo Kehrer at right backs, obviously in competition with Vladimir Soufal. Zuma and Aguerd, the centre backs. Emerson Palmieri left back. As it stands, although we do think at the time of recording they've got a deal in for Edson Alvarez now from Ajax, who's a central midfield player. Probably Downs and Souček as it stands. Bowen, Paquetá, Benrahma, and I think Antonio up front, who's also been linked again at the time of recording with a move to Wolves, who are obviously scraping the barrel with some of the business they're trying to do. But one position they're not actually short of players in is actually up front. So I don't know if Antonio's been told there's potentially less minutes this season. I know people want to, is Mbama going to play? It's not to say he won't. But I think it's similar to the Fabianski situation where I think Moyes will go with his trusted because for whatever reason, lack of business done, etc., the mood around West Ham isn't great and he reverts to type in situations like that. So I think as it stands, Antonio will play. And I think Danny Ings would be in ahead of Mbama as long as he's fit as well, to be honest. Any disagreements on that West Ham team?
No, I was just going to ask Ings versus Antonio, so... No real
well, if we have to, I think it's fair to acknowledge and ask why is Antonio consistently being linked away? We've heard Saudi Arabia. This Wolves link, we think might be an old link, and it's a resurfaced rumour that people are just spreading at the moment, possibly. But why is that? Is he consciously maybe wanting to move on and have a different challenge? I don't know. All I can do on Antonio versus Ings is judge it on the end of last season. He favoured Antonio a lot. And actually, Antonio finished last season quite well, I thought. Brighton against Luton. Right.
Good luck.
Yeah, tell me about it. Well, we did get a bit of information yesterday with the starting lineup against Vallecano. And I think probably the sensible thing here to do, because the majority of them all played over an hour, is to assume that might be the starting team. So that would be Steele in goal, Gross at right back, Webster, Dunk, Estupinan, Dahoud with Gilmore, March, Welbeck, João Pedro and Mitoma. With João Pedro dropping into the 10 position, Mitoma and March obviously staying high. There's a few caveats. Obviously, they're being heavily linked with Mohamed Kudus. I don't suppose he would go straight into that team, but pretty much all of those offensive Brighton players, even including the 2 central midfield players, I mean, it could all be wrong. I don't like looking at that team and seeing Enciso's not in it, Evan Ferguson's not in it. I've seen Adingra left wing. I'm sure Mitoma will play, but he's dynamite as well. Buonanotte on the right wing. Probably the most questionable one from an FPL perspective for P was probably Solly March, who'd only had 45 minutes prior to Sunday's friendly, but got more in him, and I think he would probably start. Whether he'd last 90 minutes against Luton, I'd probably find quite doubtful. But I would imagine that he'll probably be given the chance again, unless De Zerbi thinks that he wasn't up to required fitness levels, if you will. But I think March would probably start. It wouldn't surprise me though if it was Buonanotte instead.
How confident are you in the Pedro selection?
I'm not. I'm not at all, to be honest. I'm more confident than Phil Foden.
Okay.
If that's helpful to anyone. I think it's another one where I watched the game against Brentford and he did really well. He's obviously played and scored a penalty at the weekend. It looks like the favouritism was with him. Evan Ferguson, for whatever reason, got way less expected minutes than people thought in pre-season. And I'd almost feel it would be more likely to be Enciso than Ferguson with Welbeck at the moment. That's the way that I think they'll go, though. Yes, I think João Pedro will probably play confidence at about 80%.
Okay.
But I couldn't have that on many, still I'm almost certain plays in goal, but I wouldn't be 100% about it.
And for how long, right? Like, I've not caught up with the episode with Sam yet, but what was the kind of verdict on the keeper situation?
I think, it's similar. I know as on Black Box is quite bullish that it'll almost definitely be Steele as well. And I think Sam's confidence has grown since he recorded with me. And then obviously they played and picked this team Sunday. So I think he's more confident about it now. But I mean, I wouldn't put it up more than 90-95%. Because De Zerbi's he's different.
Yeah.
You might just go, no, actually, Verbruggen's trained better this week. I want to put him in. But I can't foresee. That one's a difficult one to foresee against it being Steele. Dunk, as long as he's had no ill effects, will definitely play. There's no reason to be concerned about Estupiñán. I don't think there's any reason to be concerned about Mitoma. I would be 95%-ish on. But I don't think... Lewis Dunk, when he's fit, is kind of 100%. Other than that, he's never more than like 95% on any Brighton player for any game, I don't think. And that's going to get worse once we get into Game 5. For Luton, we can expect a back three. They've got Kaminski in from Blackburn. I think he'll play in goal. It's worth noting they do want to get another goalkeeper in. Back three, I think, will probably be Mads Anderson, right-hand side, Lockie essentially, and Amari Bell's the left-sided centre-back. Wing-backs, Issa Kabori and Giles. I think Giles has done enough in the pre-season games to make me think he'll start ahead of Dotti and go straight in. And Panzu covered at centre-back at the weekend. They played Bochum in back-to-back games. They basically played a first team and a second team. But there was a couple of names in the second team that you would have expected to be in the first team, so I don't think it was like 100%. But Panzu covered at right-sided centre-back in the first game, but Clark got injured, who scored in the playoff final. So I think he'll go into midfield alongside Nakamba and Chong. And I do wonder if Ogbene might get the nod ahead of Adebayo.
Why is that?
Up front. To be honest, Ogbene played with Morris at the weekend in that first game, and Adebayo played in the second one. So I don't know the reason of that. I've not seen enough of Ogbene, who obviously was at Rotherham, did quite well last year. But he's looked at the partnership, and it might be that he looks at it again. I guess against Brighton, you're way more conscious of off the ball and how to hurt them as well.
Yeah.
And I think Ogbene might get the nod. That's not to say he's definitely first choice ahead of Adebayo now. I think Dan Ashby would probably disagree with that. I might be wrong. Dan will tell us. I think he would probably think Adebayo would still start as it stands. But I've had to question why Ogbene played in that first game rather than the second one. It could just be when to look at the partnership. We'll speak about Højbjerg and Bissouma in a minute, which is a strange one as well. Everton. 4-5-1. I think Pickford, Patterson, Godfrey, Tarkowski, Young. The update from the recording with Sean, I guess, is that, the Branthwaite dream is probably off. Tarkowski came off towards the end, but we think it was just precautionary, and we think it'll be okay. If Tarkowski was out, I think he'd play Michael Keane anyway, on experience. Oh, okay. So we think suddenly Godfrey's leapt ahead of Keane and Branthwaite, quite possibly. Godfrey, of course, can cover in the full-back positions as well, should anything happen there. Garner played right midfield. Iwobi played left because McNeil's injured and Damari Gray is wanting to move. He would like to move to Saturday's opponents, Fulham. That's probably another one that's probably going to happen after the game, I should imagine. Midfield 3, I think Decore, Gay and Onana, who
Good
apparently...
midfield,
yeah, do you know what? It's strong enough. Onana apparently played quite well at the weekend. We know he's a talented player. It's just not really shown yet for Everton, but I heard he played quite well at the weekend. And I know Sean isn't confident that Calvert-Lewin will play, but I think he will.
How comes?
He played 45, and he played 45 in a friendly before. My take on it would be they'd probably go down the route of playing him for an hour rather than half hour.
Off after, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that would be my thinking at the moment.
No Danjuma, no? I think he's got a knock, actually.
So Danjuma missed the friendly at the weekend because he had a little bit of a knock, and we think he's probably already back in training and it's a minor issue. But they won.
Yeah, so...
And he just likes
doesn't change it, does he?
He just likes to go with the same thing. And I think at least then if he was to use Danjuma for Calvert-Lewin late in the game, then you're looking at the mobility and something different potentially rather than sticking, say, Morpay in there.
Yeah.
Lewis Dobbin is going to be unlikely to start, I think, as it stands, because I think he had to play that game against Sporting Lisbon. He's not been priced up in FPL. So Danjuma could well start in that team. But I'm not sure who would come out in that case.
No.
At the moment, the obvious one would be playing wide, move Iwobi to the right and Danjuma to the left. But I do think there's a real keenness to play James Garner more this year. And I'm not sure from Decore or Onana, I don't see him missing out. Onana's got interest from a number of clubs, and it might be something will develop there and then, okay, that changes. But at the moment, I think he'd play. Whereas this time last week with Everton, there was concern in terms of whether he wanted to be there and was he going to get involved. He'd apparently at one stage there was rumours that he wasn't training with the team, and then suddenly he played a friendly and that was it, and it was all fine. So yeah, I'm not convinced that Danjuma would start as it stands. Fulham, back four as we can expect. Leno in goal, Tete, Diop, Bassi, Robinson. Tim Ream's been coming back from an injury. I'm not convinced he'll necessarily be risked. Be a miss for them from a leadership perspective, but obviously Bassi's a good signing, and he's basically in competition in that position, so he might get the nod. That's kind of a coin flip based on Ream's fitness. If Paulinho doesn't make it, Sasa Lukic will play in midfield with Harrison Reed, and I think the midfield three behind the front man is likely to be De Cordova, Reed, Wilson and Willian as it stands. That would be Wilson in the 10 position. Rather than the right-hand side is probably the most likely, and I think Mitrovic will play.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
He only came on as a substitute at the weekend, but the word from Fulham people was that they had a behind-closed-doors game the day before where they wanted to play him for as long as possible, and then that's why he only had a cameo appearance on the Saturday. Plus, there was a little bit of concern about what the reaction would be like with the crowd. It was largely okay, little bit mixed, but it's like that's over with now.
Yeah.
And I think he'll go in the team, despite the fact Jimenez scored in that friendly. So basically the order of preference would be Mitrovic, Jimenez, Vinicius, third choice as it stands. Mitrovic could still go, so I think that could change at any point if there's a serious enough bid. Changes, but the fact that he's been reintegrated when supposedly he was saying, no, I'm not playing for this club anymore, and it's dealt with before the season starts, makes me think away game as well against the physicality of what Everton are. Yeah, there's every chance Mitrovic will play. Actually,
can't argue with the logic.
Sheffield United Palace is the 3 o'clocks, so this comes with a big caveat because I've got Sander Berger in this predicted team, and it could be a Burnley player by the time you hear this. So. Back three, League One, Wes Foderingham in goal. That's Tomo's words, not mine. Back three of Ahmed Hodzic, Egan and Robinson as it stands, but it could be the boy who's come from you, Alston Trusty might play in that position. I think wing-backs, based on what we saw at the weekend, is probably likely to be Baldock and Larouci as it stands. Slimani, Berger and Osborne, the midfield three. I would guess if Berger goes to Burnley, there's not much option other than to play Oliver Norwood in that position. But I think he's one of a number of players at Sheffield United where there's doubts over fitness at the moment. And I think the front two will probably be Benny Traore, who they've got in, And I think Oliver McBurney, again, it's another one where Sheffield United played Stuttgart at the weekend. After the game, there was a behind closed doors game, which we don't have the details of, but we think McBurney probably played in that. And I think in terms of his experience, etc., he's likely to start as Sheffield United's main number 9, particularly with obviously Ilman and Dye gone, keep some form of experience at that top end in the team. So that could be different. Those hoping for Will Ashula to start because he started the last friendly, he may do, but I wouldn't expect it, to be totally honest. The enabling option there, if you want to go for it, really is Baldock, in my opinion. Palace, we can probably be more confident about this than any other team, unless there's any injuries or transfer changes. And it's basically because Roy Hodgson's pretty much come out and said from the Seville game what his intended team was, and then it played again in the friendly at the weekend. So Johnson in goal, Ward, Anderson, Gay, Nathaniel Klein covering at left back at the moment, Doucouré and Lerma, Ayew, Eza, Schlupp and Edouard. That's, of all 20 teams this weekend, that's probably the one I'd be most confident about. Don't see it being any different to that.
Nope.
And I might bench boost with Jeffrey Schlupp. Just saying, hashtag.
How serious are you about that?
What, the bench boost? Yeah. I'll talk about it in the coming days. I'm not unserious. I'm very serious when I mention it as a possibility. I just need to have the courage to do it if I want to. Probably not, but yeah. Garnacho is a better choice than Sancho anyway, as we get on to. Newcastle Villa's the 5:30 game.
Should be a great game.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of debate amongst Newcastle fans, basically over one position in the team at the moment, which we'll touch on a bit. So I've got it as follows. So Pope in goal is the standard. Trippier, Schär, Botman and Burn. I don't know why I've written Target down on my notes.
That, yeah.
Literally, no idea why I've written Target down on my notes.
Do you mean to write Tierney or something?
Dan Burn. I'm looking at it going, why have you written that? No, Dan Burn at left back. Tonali, I think, will play. Gimaresh, I think Elliot Anderson will start.
Interesting.
Almiron, Isak, Joel Linton. So the debate at the moment is basically which kind of 2 or 4 between Tonali, Anderson, Gordon and Harvey Barnes. Now, Joel Linton obviously can slot seamlessly back into that midfield 3. I've got him left of the front 3 as it stands. I just think there'll be a keen willingness, because we think Villa will probably attack from that side.
Yeah.
To counter that with very, very high pressing. And Anderson can go and support and I think interchange with Joel Linton in the way that Willock has done that in the past. And I think for this particular fixture, which is a challenging one because they're a good side, Villa, that I think that might be what gets the nod. That's also what makes me think that Tonali might play.
Who do you think would sit in that?
Gimaresh. But Tonali will have breaks on as well, particularly if they lean to that kind of left-sided heavy press and stuff. Longstaff we think's fit, so look, could play instead of Tonali instead. But I think they've probably pushed him enough in pre-season to make me think that he probably will play.
Sure.
He's a good player. Villa. This is a tough one, actually.
Yeah.
Back 4 I'm quite confident on. So I think it'd be Martinez in goal, obviously. I think Cash, Conson, Mings and Pau Torres.
Sure. So that's Torres tucking in from the left.
Torres tuck in from left back. Matty Cash push forward from right back, which would mean Diaby coming off that right-hand side and getting involved in central areas. So I think Lewis and Kamara as a double pivot, which allows Kamara will sit far more, obviously. Diaby on the right, but allowed to come in. Buendia at 10. I think John McGinn left. That could easily be McGinn at 10. Buendia to come off of left. But I wonder if McGinn versus Trippier. This was something I mentioned a few weeks ago that they might do, actually. As in to try and push Trippier back to what Newcastle might do to Villa. Villa might try and do back to Newcastle with the same thing.
I think it's going to be a great game.
I think from neutral, it's probably even more so than Chelsea-Liverpool. It's probably the most interesting fixture of the weekend, arguably. Ollie Watkins up front, obviously. There's no question on that.
Nope.
So, no Tielemans in that. Could easily be in it. I don't think Philogene Biddance will play, but I certainly wouldn't fall off my chair with shock if he did, because he's had a good pre-season. But I don't think it'd be far wrong from that. I think the back 4, if people want to, we weren't so confident. We spoke to Lee last week, but I think the closer it's got, the more confidence we've got that they'll attack from the right, for the time being at least. Whether they deem that differently for, say, Everton next week and do it from the left with Luca Dean, like they might. But I think it will primarily be this as the favoured option till Moreno's back fit. Sunday games, Brentford, Tottenham. I think Brentford will play a back four. Could obviously be a back five. I think if it was a back five, Nathan Collins would come in, but I certainly note that Tom Meds said last week, Pinnock and me would be the two if it was in a back four. Flecken will play in goal. I think we're probably beyond the point of worrying about that. Aaron Hickey did cover at left back at the weekend. Rossliff played right back. I think Hickey will go back to right back and Henry will play left back. It seems that they've just taken literally no chances with Brentford players who had any issues. So Onyeka and Mbeumo came off in the game quite early with minor issues, and Mbeumo reportedly a dead leg, so there shouldn't be an issue. I think Hickey right back, Henry left back, that's their best options. Onyeka in midfield with Janelt and Jensen. I do think that will be the midfield three at the start. I do have a consciousness that Onyeka was taken off at half-time in the game at Tottenham in 37, and Damsgaard came on, but this is a very different Tottenham now to that one. I think front three, and Mbeumo, Visser, and this is partly trusting Tom Med's word, Keane Lewis Potter, as left-sided forward. Tom said he'd probably been Brentford's best player in pre-season, in his opinion, and I think he might get the nod over Kevin Shardo.
Was Tom confident that he'd start as well?
Not as such, no, because we had a really good discussion last week where we kind of bounced back ideas, and there's been some interesting things where they moved Mbeumo to the left and Shardo through the middle when they played against Villa in a pre-season friendly. I think if it's that free, it would definitely be like that. So Mbeumo right, Lewis Potter left, Visser up front. And that's probably the case if it's Shardo instead of Lewis Potter. They've got options there. The other thing to note with them is, I mentioned Brennan Johnson earlier, they are looking for another forward.
Yeah. What do you think they should do to get at you guys?
I think they should play a back five and they should play Shardo and Mbeumo up front.
Interesting. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they actually go with that.
And just smash it over the top of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the reason I think back five for them as well is that's historically what they've done in the more difficult games. But I think they've got themselves to a position now where they'd like to be a little bit more than what they've been.
Yeah.
People who watch Brentford in the Championship speak very well about how well they played football. And we do see it on occasion more now when they play so-called weaker teams in the league. That includes the Tottenham team that they played in Gameweek 37. They played some nice football in that game. But when they've faced tougher team challenges, they have done better when they've played a back five. So there's nothing to say they won't do that. Tottenham are going to be way more ball-orientated than they've been in terms of wanting to dominate the game, and they're going to put the press on. Basically, if you break through our lines, we are murdered. But it might be tough to do it at the same time. So that's why I'd go, and Mbeumo and Shardo up front. Shardo, you ain't catching him. No, he rapid. Really is rapid. Right, the Tottenham team. We now have way more clarity, I think, on this than we had when me and Ricky recorded last week. Vicario in goal, that's fairly obvious. We thought it would be Royal and Udogie as the fullbacks. I'm pretty sure Ricky would now say he's 95% on that. That's certainly how I feel. Both of them played very well in the friendly on Sunday against Shakhtar Donetsk. Udogie particularly was brilliant. He is a super talent.
Sounds like he's had a great pre-season.
He is good, yeah. He's extremely calm for his age, and he gets it. His English is outstanding, which people might not know, so that's not a problem for him. But he gets it. He did a really nice interview with Tottenham afterwards where he just completely gets it and understands the idea of his son's holding the touchline, come in centrally. His son's gone into more of a 10 position. He has to go and hold the touchline instead. They've built up a good relationship so far. So I'd be very confident that, and to be honest, I'd be massively surprised if Porro played over Emerson Royal at the moment. Royal's the one who's just got it best of all in terms of moving into the midfield position. He's not as good technically as the others, we know that, but he's better defensively and he understands what's being asked of him best. Oh. So very confident on that. Romero, right-sided centre-back. As it stands, Ben Davis will play. He'll get favouritism over the others as a left-sided centre-back. I'm very hopeful, as Clayton will see on my notes, that Mickey van der Ven will go straight in the team.
Straight in, yeah?
Yeah, I'm hopeful. At the time of recording, it's Monday afternoon. We know he was at the game yesterday. I could see him from my seat. Wearing his green jacket, stood out like a sore thumb. He wasn't going in subtle. He was going in and he was well aware that he was being seen.
Not letting go of his Wolfsburg
So
colours,
I'm hopeful that he's going to play at Barcelona in the friendly that Tottenham have on Tuesday evening. We think that will be a largely rotated Tottenham team, but I think if he plays it and he comes through it okay, there's obviously an element of risk because he won't have played with Romero before, but Tottenham need this quite quickly, and I'm hopeful that he'll play. For those who don't know him, he's a big, powerful, left-footed centre-back. He's 6'4", and he's also rapid, which is an unusual combination. So I'm hopeful that he's going to go straight in the team. Midfield, at the moment, I've got Bissouma in the base in the 6th position, but we have to ask questions why Højbjerg played in the first team game, essentially, against Shakhtar on Sunday, and Bissouma didn't get on the pitch. And I can't answer the question for that.
Interesting.
I'm kind of hopeful that Bissouma felt something in the morning and was like, don't take the risk, and hopefully he'll play in, obviously, Barcelona and then be fine.
Had Højbjerg played any of the pre-season in the 6? Okay.
Yeah, so they'd used it quite a bit where Højbjerg had played the second halves in that position in the second team, if you will. And Bissouma had been starting in the first team. There was nothing I saw from Bissouma in the first 2 friendlies that made me think anything other than he was clear first choice. And Højbjerg went from 10 good minutes to 5 bad minutes, like throughout the game.
Sure.
Against relatively average opposition on Sunday. Højbjerg could play. Why am I talking about this so much? Because actually this is very relevant for Sky Fantasy managers. I think it'll be Bissouma, but for the Sky listeners, I would not have any confidence in that at this minute in time, at the time of recording, to say, yeah, go for it. I'd probably have more confidence in who plays in the 8 right position. I think that'll be Pape Sarr, who's bottom price in Sky, and he's also bottom price in FPL. And I'm not saying you should necessarily go there, but I think he's interesting. I think he's clear of Oliver Skip at the moment. Way more in terms of all-round game. And will get into the box. He will be allowed to do that from the right 8 position. Maddison will play, that's clear. As it stands, time recording, Kulusevski, Kane, Son will be the front 3. At the time recording, we believe in the last couple of hours, Tottenham have turned down Bayern Munich's latest final bid deal for Harry Kane. I wouldn't be surprised if they come back again, but this is, at the time recording, is more confident. I'm more confident at Kane staying than I was yesterday and the day before, if you will. So, yeah, it could be that Levy's calling the bluff and he thinks Bayern will come back with more, which we shouldn't rule out.
It would change so much in the case of
I still don't think, from a fantasy perspective, I don't think go with him, because I really do think it could be deadline passes Friday and then on Saturday it's still agreed. I
really?
do think that's a possibility. Everybody, if it's going to happen, everybody wants to get it done by Sunday.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if it's Saturday. They've come to a deal. He's not going to play tomorrow. I wouldn't be surprised. But as it stands, it's beginning to look more and more like
I'm thinking the same.
He may stay. So the question marks on that Tottenham team would be the 6th position, left-sided centre-back, a little bit right-sided 8. But now, we can be pretty confident about the rest. If Kane goes, Richarlison will play as the 9. Almost certain of that. Chelsea-Liverpool. Back 4 for Chelsea has been used in pre-season. I think this picks itself currently. Kepa, James Silva, Colwell, Chilwell, Enzo Fernandez and Conor Gallagher as it stands, but who knows, they might buy someone between now and I think it's got to be by Friday afternoon, I think, to play.
Register him,
I think as it stands, we think Nkunku's not going to be available is what we think at the moment. So the change from the starting lineup that played against Villarreal, Mudryk came on for him. And I think he'll probably come into the team. So it would be Sterling right, Chukwuemeka ahead of the 2 midfield, Mudryk left, and Jackson up front. I would not be surprised if Ian Maatsen is the selection instead.
Instead of Jack?
Instead of Mudryk.
Oh, okay, right.
And they could leave him on the left or obviously move him to the right and Sterling to the other side. There's a few things they can do. Chukwuemeka can play wide if necessary as well. There was a thing I'm conscious about Mudryk, and I don't think people are going to suddenly go and gamble for him for fantasy, is what he does with Trent.
Yeah.
That's why I'm not convinced. If Chelsea were playing an average team this weekend, I'd think, Mudryk will start. But it's a case of what's going to happen here with Trent. Do they leave him there, which they could do, and say to Trent, well, go on then, you be brave, go inside. We're going to leave this lad out on the left and Paul Canate and them all across. Can do that. Or are they going to ask him to, and he does work hard, Mudryk, are they going to ask him to go with Trent? It's probably an interesting tactical bit from the weekend. If it's, say, Maatsen instead of Mudryk, we can probably read that they're thinking quite a lot about what Trent's doing.
Yeah. I think if it does go that way, though, of just leaving Mudryk as the outlet.
Do you know what he needs is a real confidence game?
Yeah.
Mudryk.
Well, his 20-minute cameo.
And it might be, he had that brilliant performance at Anfield when he came on as a sub. And it might be that the space is left there for him and he looks around and thinks, this is on for me here.
Yeah.
And
his best clips
interesting
were always like in transition and stuff. And I'm conscious, obviously, it was always against better opposition when he was at Shakhtar, but this feels like tactically a game that could suit him to a T.
Yeah. No, it could do, but it also has dangers for Chelsea defensively as well. So you can flip that either way. Liverpool, as it stands with what they've got, it's probably only really one up for debate here, and it's one of the forward positions. So I think Alisson, Trent, Konate, Van Dijk, Robertson. As it stands, Jones will be the 6, we think.
Yep.
Szoboszlai and McAllister ahead of that. Front 3, I think Salah, Núñez, Diaz.
Care to explain? Well, Salah
I said this weeks ago on Núñez that I thought against Chelsea specifically would want Núñez to play. But it could easily be one of the others. It could be that he wants Gakpo to get around, say Enzo Fernandez, for example. Yeah. There's loads of different ways he could do it, and the beauty of the forward players they've got now is they can do that and mix it up based on what they want to do with an opposition. But I think a lot of that will be Núñez turning Chelsea opening day, test them, get into that channel behind Colwell and get Thiago Silva turned and test that. That's what I think. I easily could be wrong, and it's another one I don't particularly want people to gamble from a fancy perspective because I'm going to predict him to start. And one of my fears actually that I said was people who want Núñez, and I thought about him quite a bit, is primarily because of the Bournemouth game in 2. I don't think it's inconceivable that, say, Núñez played Chelsea and Newcastle and Jota played Bournemouth, for example.
Agree.
It really wouldn't surprise me at all. So,
how confident are you in Diaz?
Yeah, I think so. 70-ish%. I don't think anyone's looking for him as fantasy as such. Probably need to see that rediscovery of the player that we definitely know that he is. I'm a fan. I think he's a very good player.
Yeah, me too.
I think the sooner they get him up to speed, probably the better for him as well. He's definitely the most natural to play on that side, in my opinion. Jota can do it. We've seen Núñez can do it. But it does feel like there's an intent to try and get Núñez back through the middle, I feel now. So it's probably Diaz, Jota for the left spot. I wouldn't be surprised if Jota played instead of Diaz. And I wouldn't be surprised if Jota played instead of Núñez. But it's probably only those 2. Other than that, the other 9, I think would probably, as it stands, unless they buy, which they might do, I'd be confident with that. But even if they did, say, complete a deal for Lavia, I don't think Lavia starts on Sunday.
Immediately, no. Agree.
Finally, Manchester United Wolves. I think United's fairly straightforward at the moment because Højlund's not available for the weekend as far as we're aware. So I think it will be Onana, Dalot, Varane, Martinez, Shaw, Casemiro, Anthony, Fernandez, Mount, Garnacho and Rashford. Garnacho, almost looking at that, feels like the only one that's up for debate, I think.
Yeah, and even that, I think most United fans want him to start.
It's talent. It's a good fixture as well, like Wolves at home. That's, as it stands, the only one look, they could bring Eriksen in and push Fernandes into a wider role. Could Martial play? I don't think so. No, I think Garnacho will play as it stands at the moment. I think he's a cheeky little one as well. I'm keen on people punting that on my words than Diaz or Foden, I think. Play it your way as always. And for Wolves...
just quickly before, how long do you think it will be until... How do you pronounce the...
Højlund?
It's literally pronounced Højlund. Okay.
No, I actually saw a video of him pronouncing it, and I'm not going to attempt to do that. I think it was, he said something like Højlund or something, and
I'm not going to try that.
I'm going to go with whatever the commentators say. For me, at the moment, it's Højlund.
How long do you think it'll take for him?
Apologies for the butchering.
Yeah. How long do you think it'll take for him to get integrated in?
I don't think there's necessarily a rush. I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't starting regularly till sort of game week 5-6, actually.
Okay.
I think if he's behind on match fitness and he's got to acclimatise and join in, it feels like using him at the end of games might make more sense at the moment. There's a couple of difficult away games coming up with Tottenham, Arsenal, then Brighton in 5. So then you think, okay, they might look at it and think game week 3, if he's ready, playing at home to Forest might be a good time to do it. But I suspect they might just go quite easy. Champions League starts up, then you'll get more natural rotation anyway.
Yeah,
and subject to who they draw, the league fixtures then ease up for United as well, and I think that's probably when I think he will become first choice.
Yeah.
But that might also have quite a lot to do with Garnacho's performances at the start of the season.
Do you think Sancho will knock on the door at all? Or?
Yeah, look, Sancho's obviously an alternative there to Garnacho. Yeah, absolutely. But judging on what we've seen over the last couple of weeks, I think there's every chance Garnacho will start. I can't wait for United fans to tell me I'm wrong about that because I want a bench boost with Garnacho rather than Jeffrey Schlupp. There's about a 20% chance of that happening.
Mad.
Yeah. Well, yeah, my wife knows that. And finally, Wolves, back four, I think, but I wouldn't be surprised because of the fixture if suddenly it is like a 5-4-1. Sarr in goal, Semedo, Dawson, Kilman. Probably Ait-Nouri now. He's got a really good goal at the weekend.
He was an FPL...
We've been there, yeah. Well, Hugo Bueno last year. Listen, there's no Wolves player that's an FPL option right now. Sorry. Nunes is probably the closest to that at 5.0. I'm not bench boosting with him. That's a definite. Not with that fixture. Nunes, Lamino, Gomez, I think will be the midfield three. And I think probably Hwang, Cunha, Neto. A lot of the Wolves guys on our Patreon would like Silva to play and get in, but I think that might be eased in. There's a number that can play in them forward positions. Sarabia, we thought Daniel Podence was going, then he was back in the squad as well over the weekend. So they've got options, just none of them are particularly trustworthy. He's going to provide the goals at the moment. It'd obviously be a game changer for them. If Nunes steps up like we think he might, Neto can rediscover the form of a couple of years ago. Suddenly all this talk of them being in danger of going down will feel different about them and probably be saying, well, can they finish 10th? So... yeah, they've got the players. They need to keep those defensive ones fit. And they need to do well defensively because historically, they just don't score enough goals.
Yep.
I think that's it.
Nicely done.
From predicted lineups. Let me tell you now that from the 200 and... how many predictions there are there? Was that 220?
I'm just going to quickly do...
Are you going to work that out?
Yeah.
11 times 20.
220.
How difficult could it be? 220.
Live on camera. I'm nervous.
There's absolutely zero chance of 100% of them being right. But I think probably 90% or so will. Obviously, keep an eye on team news. Ben Dinner is really good for your team news. I don't think Colm Hayes is doing them this year on Twitter, unfortunately. Fantasy Football Scout's very good as well in terms of really updating on specifically the FPL-related ones near deadline as well. There'll be other accounts, but know who your trusted sources are and stuff as well. Press conferences will be Thursday, Friday, and of course, transfer window is still open as well. You got anything else out with me today?
No.
Okay, don't plug the transfer window show on Patreon.
I literally just said tomorrow. You said today.
Yes, this is meant to be Tuesday now, Clayton.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Okay. Got the transfer show
on Patreon. Yes. Suj will be back with me for the Sky Fantasy Football Podcast on Wednesday. Just leaves me to say thank you very much to Clayton. Remember, guys, play it your way. Cue music, please, man child. Shit, that was long.